Hello, Steve White, Trekboy89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, I finally saw What We Leave Behind, the documentary about Deep Space Nine. Um, I I sort of wanted to see this, but there was no way I was paying for it. Um, I I respect Star Trek Deep Space Nine as a science fiction series. The writing's good, the directing's good, the acting's good, all of that. But it's not really a Star Trek series. It is the anti-Star Trek, deliberately the anti-Star Trek series. It was designed that way. The people who made it hated Star Trek: The Next Generation. They did not believe Gene's ideals. They didn't believe really in the evolution of humanity and that we would be in a better place. And they just really wanted to pull Star Trek back down to our level, and make it about war and religion and terrorism, and basically to say that at the end of the day, humanity is full of violence and evil, and we're never going to get away from that. And any sort of idea of an utopia is just infantile and, unrealistic, and, it can't exist without, MAGA in the background and terrorism and all these, and, abuse and all these things that they celebrate in the show. So I've never really liked the show. I mean, a lot of fans were worried about when it first started that it would be too slow, the idea of it just being on a space station. None of that really bothered me because, okay, so people come to the space station, but you can still have the same stories and the same adventure on some level, even if the people are coming to you and the stories are coming to you. So the location never really bothered me. So I sort of was into Star Trek Deep Space Nine for the first couple of seasons. It was only when they left the station, they gave up on that and said, no, we need to be back on a ship, and we need to they just sort of betrayed the original sort of concept of the show, and then, totally threw out and destroyed the whole concept of Star Trek as a whole, and just embraced war and long form storytelling, which is Star Trek's an anthology show with different stories. Planet of the Week. That's what Star Trek is. You should be able to just watch an episode and have a story and experience and a lesson and a moral, as opposed to having to watch 30 episodes just to get one chapter of an overall war epic. And basically it's celebrating war and celebrating something about America. They have this war culture and they don't even realize it. They think it's normal. They think conflict and that is natural, and that's what humanity is, and that's the most disgusting, offensive thing about Deep Space Nine is the idea that humanity is basically about war, and conflict and fight, and that's just who we are, and we can never be anything more than that. It's just so cynical and ugly. So that's why I don't like Deep Space Nine. Now the documentary itself, I don't really need to spend that much time talking about it because it really didn't say anything. I was really shocked by how little it said. They wasted probably a third of the documentary with a writer's room, like a fake writer's room, where they were saying, sort of spitballing what they would do if they came back and did Deep Space Nine again, and they followed up, like I think 20 years later or something, and they just had all these scenarios, and it was all kind of cringe and just wrong. It didn't really work. And then the rest of the film was basically just the actors telling random stories about the show. They spent very little time talking about anything real. They totally blew over the whole thing with Terry Farrell being fired. They showed her talking about it and she became very emotional, and everyone was sort of looking on very seriously, listening to her, but they didn't really explain what happened or give any definitive version of what happened or anything. And it was just really gutless how little they went into that. They did have a moment where Ira Stephen Burrow, whatever his name is, who I truly hate and hope I never meet because I would have a go at him. He did say that they don't get points for gay representation. He mentioned that Garak was obviously gay and he came out in the second season, which I missed, but I guess because I knew he was gay the whole time I maybe just didn't notice. But they didn't explore it, they didn't go anywhere with it, and they should have. And they don't get any points for that. So I guess that's a little bit of self-reflection there. But aside from that, they continue to say that this is the best series, and just it just made me sick. these people who don't know what Star Trek is, who deliberately tried to destroy Star Trek. Like, Star Trek was about humanity evolving, being better, getting past, immature things like religion and war and going out into the galaxy, into the universe, exploring and, helping other people, get past these problems that we got past and what we learn about ourselves through that. And that's what Star Trek was. And they tried to undo all that and basically say, no, in the future we're going to have the same problems because we basically are the same, hateful, warmongering creatures that we've always been. That was just a really ugly, cynical thing, and I just didn't think the documentary had anything to say about that. And the series itself doesn't represent Star Trek, and I kind of wasted my time watching it. So I thought I was done talking about Deep Space Nine. I saw the documentary, What We Leave Behind. I was never going to pay for it, and it finally came on YouTube for free, so I watched it last night. And the thing I really resented is just the bitterness and cynicism that R. Stephen Burr had in regards to Star Trek. It's like he resented the idea that we could do better, and he sort of made the comment that it was like, look at what's happening today and tell me we'll be any better in 400 years. Like how dare you suggest that we'll do better, that we can do better, that we're going to be any more than this, that we're just this. There's just no hope. We're just these ugly people that do horrible things to each other. Like, humanity is a horrible, ugly thing, and that's his way of looking at the real world. And he sees Star Trek as some sort of immature fantasy, like the idea of utopia and the idea that we can get past these problems and actually have a peaceful future. Is something that he seemed to resent, and seemed determined to destroy, like to prove that no. Like he's justifying his flaws and our flaws by saying, we could never be any better. And I just find that really ugly and cynical and sad. And I just wanted to say that. So I think I'm just going to add this onto my review, and it'll be more than 6 minutes. But I was almost going to do another video, but I said most of it in that review, so I'm just going to add this on at the end of that, I think. So it's just going to be a little epilogue to the review. But I really was surprised at how little they explored any real issues in the show. It's mostly just the actors and producers and production team just talking about random things from the show. They really only spent a little bit of time talking about what they were trying to say with the show. And there was a lot of celebration of, contemporary people identifying with contemporary issues in the show and acting like, well, that makes this the best Star Trek show because it's more relatable, because people can see, oh, look, in the future, they're just as dysfunctional and broken as us, and they have wars and religion and all these horrible things too, just like us, instead of showing those people that, those things still exist, but we've moved past it, and, things are going to be better and there is hope. So I don't see why people gravitate so much to this show that has no hope. And I know people will say that, it argued against war, and I'm like, the characters did because they experienced it and it was traumatic and horrible to them. But the show itself celebrates war, and it says, that is the true nature of humanity. The only way that we function, what's going to be in the future is just the same old war and violence. And it's just a very cynical American thing, because America has this real war culture, and they just see that as every day. That's just life to them, is another day, another war. They've been at war for like 200 something years out of the 300 years that they've existed. Something like that. Someone calculated it at some point. And I just find it dark and cynical and sad. And I thought I was done, and then I just was thinking about it. I'm like, I didn't really clarify, I didn't really point out a few of those little things that I sort of got from it. It's sort of what I knew. That's why, in part, why I didn't want to watch it, because I didn't want to hear them justify, what they did to Star Trek. And they only do it for a few minutes, because most of the documentary is just blathering on about just random stuff, and there's no real structure. It doesn't have a real documentary sense where there's someone, going through with a narration explaining what happened and things that happened. It's just like a lot of documentaries now where they just get people to talk about random incidents and they just piece them together in a rough timeline and kind of tell an overall story with little stories and never really give a definitive answer or version of anything. And it's not really my favourite style of documentary. And it looks like this is going to be a 10-minute review of the documentary and I guess Deep Space Nine as a whole. Because, like I said, as a general science fiction series, so far as the writing and everything, it's good. It's brilliant at times, but it's not really Star Trek. And one of the best examples of how it isn't Star Trek is Far Beyond the Stars, because they go back in time to tell the story of this writer who was discriminated against and the racism he dealt with back in, I think, the 50s that it's set in. What place does that have in the future of Star Trek? What place does that have in Star Trek in the future of humanity, where it's something we've moved beyond hundreds of